Hello folks, today I want to show you this book. Is it the next book? Well, it is from 1989 and it is about a very important topic about NeXT computers. The book was written by Bruce F. Webster. And let's have a look inside. In 1989, everyone interested in personal computers knew about NeXT, and hardly anyone could afford to buy this pretty sweet machine. $6,000, $7,000 maybe. Bruce Webster starts his book by introducing the four main chapters: the NeXT computer hardware, the software for NeXT, the user interface, and programming software for the NeXT system. NeXT Inc. developed a few PCs. The only popular one was the NeXT Cube. Bruce Webster wrote the book on his own NeXT Cube. He had to convert the whole text to Microsoft Word in order to get it into Addison Wesley's desktop publishing system. This already shows how limited the software variety was. No wonder, since NeXT was squeezed in between early Microsoft Windows PCs and the Apple Macintosh world, which grew at that time. Talking about the Mac, Steve Jobs introduced this highly innovative, user-friendly machine in early 1984, the Macintosh. A year later, the Apple board of directors asked him to leave the company. Basically, they pushed him out. But he was quite aggressive, I think, towards them. Long story. Anyway, Steve Jobs founded NeXT Inc. and sold it 11 years later to, well, Apple, when he, Steve Jobs, was invited back to the then struggling company. His return to Apple with all the knowledge from his time with NeXT paved the path to Apple's bright future from then on. By the way, I interviewed Steve Jobs in this building in 1996. It was not a pleasant meeting for both of us. I think he didn't want to answer any questions about NeXT and Apple because he was just on his way back to Apple. So we talked about basically nothing, a quarter of an hour about Pixar and laser printers. But back to the book, to the NeXT Cube, a beautiful machine. At the back, we see a few interface connectors for the monitor, keyboard and mouse, printer, external drive via SCSI, and Ethernet in order to connect the PC to other computers and computer networks. Steve Jobs obviously had learned from his involvement in developing the Macintosh that a clean layout of the internals is gaining importance in the PC industry. So we see this clean layout in the NeXT Cube, the power supply at the bottom and 4 slots, one of which is occupied by the motherboard. Of course, the communication between the motherboard and other components has a marketing name, NeXT Bus. You could mount a floppy drive or a hard drive, which was then often called a fixed drive. Hard drives with 100 megabytes of storage were getting popular. They were very expensive. The outstanding innovation concerning data was an optical disk drive with a maximum capacity of 256 megabytes. Bruce Webster describes the technology behind this kind of storage. One of many reasons why this book is a treasure for people interested in PC history, who today talks about optical disk drives. Webster mentions Steve Jobs only 2 or 3 times in the book, strange, but he writes that Steve Jobs insisted on a big screen. The NeXT monitor was very heavy, of course, and had a 17-inch monitor, grayscale, no color. The Macintosh sound system was important, same with NeXT. The mouse had 2 buttons, the Macintosh mouse had only 1. Steve Jobs was obsessed with printing out things you see on the screen. The paperless office was a myth then. I remember at that time, late 1980s, I visited a desktop publishing company in London and was amazed at the printing process. Lots of Macintosh computers in that loft, all connected via Ethernet to a single laser printer, somewhere in the corner. Bruce Webster comments on software coming with the next computer. He suspects that third-party developers don't want to compete with the bundled software developers. The implications for the NeXT system were very little, since NeXT did not really sell a lot of computers, but the implications of what you can bundle with your operating system later on led to big fights. For example, Microsoft with its market dominance and the Microsoft browser for the web. Or think of the apps for smartphones, a huge market today for third-party developers. The NeXT operating system in 1989 was in its 0.9 release state, as we can read on page 117. NeXT provided an interface builder for the layout of Windows, which in this screenshot looks quite intimidating. Compositing is a term of the special effects film industry. In this chapter, Bruce Webster talks about moving objects on a static background. This is compositing, yes it is. He mentions the alpha value and transparency values. The next operating system was called Mac, which comes from the Unix world. Unix was a widely used and free operating system on big computers, so-called workstations. NeXT has gained the benefits of Unix while avoiding many of its weaknesses, writes Bruce Webster. The preference window looks very similar to the Macintosh preferences window even nowadays. In 1989, we were 4 years before the World Wide Web was introduced. Electronic mail was built into the NeXT Cube, and the Mail app had a button to get help on how to connect your computer to a computer network, which was a local network at that time. For pre-WWW networks such as CompuServe or Genie, you had to use their dedicated mail systems. They are not mentioned in the book. There probably was no CompuServe app available in the tiny NeXT universe. The NeXT mail system could handle file attachments and even voice. NeXT apps could be programmed with an object-oriented language like C++. This was not unique to NeXT. Apple and Microsoft used the same technique to program applications. This book is, unlike others from that time, not totally outdated today. Why not? Well, because NeXT was purchased by Apple when Steve Jobs returned, and after that magnificent new start, NeXT, with the capital letters X and T, sank into the lap of history. And apart from that, I wish you a very good day. Bye.